It's no coincidence that the rise of social media, it correlates directly to the rise of...
I think that's where social media is scary. Some kids it can affect more than others.
On social media, travel baseball looks like every kid's hitting 600. And so a kid looks at that. That's who I'm competing against.
How do you get your kid visibility without leaning too much into the me?
I'm afraid I'm going to have an extreme answer, so you go ahead.
If you're seeing post after post, game after game after game, I think that's where it's like...
It's a vehicle for comparison. A kid is probably the most insecure they're ever going to be in life, and yet...
And we see it with athletes now, guys, female and male. They might have posted something 15 years ago, and it gets brought up.
We have to, as parents, recognize this is the culture our kids, live in. How do they adapt to that culture in a healthy way?
Before we get to the podcast, if you have middle school or high school kids that play sports and you don't want to fundraise like me, we got you covered. My buddy Chris Carneal owns Booster. Chris?
We help schools and sports teams raise funds in a super fun and engaging way. In fact, the last 22 years, we've raised $750 million, and we can't wait to help you. Choose booster.com.
Welcome back to Pure Athlete. I am Jeff Francoeur along with my two compadres, Britt Lee and Brad Williams. They are back in Atlanta. Guys, I am up in New York. I have the Mets and Red Sox tonight. I'm really disappointed in myself, though, that I'm usually a guy that plans. And I'm get here last night. I could have been at the U.S. Open last night watching Tommy Paul play. I dropped the ball, guys. I dropped the ball. I was so mad. We're actually staying at the hotel where like all the U.S. Open workers are. So I walked in and I'm so mad at myself, but I'm up here and got a big game tonight. So should be a lot of fun. I know, Britt, you've kind of had nothing going on, I don't think, but Brad, on the other hand, you just dropped your son off at college, Brady.
Yeah, it was a great trip. We were out there for about 4 days. Did a lot of sightseeing, dropped him off at a really great school called Biola University in La Mirada, California. And man, it just, it was a little sad, but at the same time, I feel he's ready and God's got him ready. And that place is really, really special. Didn't know a lot about it before he did all the research, and wanted to look into it. We visited it once, but then we went back out there, just so impressed with just, gosh, they're just excellent at everything they do. And so I'm excited for him, but yeah, it's different. The house is quieter. We've got, one kid in California, one kid in Nashville, one kid in New York, and 3 kids at home still, but it's a lot quieter even with 3 kids at home. But thanks for asking. But I think it'll be a great experience, hopefully.
Hey, Jeff, I got to say, for all the parents out there whose kids are, 12 or 13 or whatever, and think, my kid is never going to leave home. That was Brad.
Oh, yeah.
4 or 5 years ago said Brady will never go off to college. He's going to live in my house.
Yeah, I
thought he's gone to California.
Yeah, I thought he would do online in our house, and now he's as far away as you possibly could be. But really it's great cool how God's prepared him for it. So thanks for asking.
Britt, speaking of that, it's so funny because we sit here and my daughter, is 11 now, the oldest, and we just keep thinking, man, she's farther away from being in college than she was when she was born now. And time does fly. And I think it's why it's so important what we're doing in this podcast and talking, because the time is short and you want to make the most of the experiences that you have with your kids.
Yeah, no doubt. You definitely are in Manhattan, aren't you? Because I can hear the sirens going off.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get away from that, right? Like, you can do all the stuff you want, but this is Manhattan.
It adds to the ambiance of the show that you're local there. So.
We were talking right before we came on the air here about the Tour Championship this weekend, and something pretty cool happened.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'll probably mispronounce his name, but Sahith Theegala just really just showing kind of something that we think is just a great actions of a role model. Earlier round, he was in a sand trap, and he thought possibly that he had grounded his club, saw a little bit of sand fly up, and then voluntarily, turned himself in and say, hey, I think I may have done that. I may have, done something wrong in golf and in a major tournament. And when they even went back and looked at it on tape, they really couldn't even for sure say he did it. But I mean, they basically left up to him to say, and he said, "Yeah, I just think I can't say I didn't do it, so I just think I should go ahead and get penalized."
I think the cool thing is, yeah, he played with Colin Morikawa, and I thought the awesome thing is you already know what people think of him. When Colin Morikawa came over, he's like, "Dude, I don't think you did anything. If you didn't necessarily for sure see it, let's just keep playing." And I think that tells you everything right there, because we all know a few guys in golf that the other guys would be like, "Yep, that's a penalty," or what type of people they are. But he ended up still giving himself a 2-stroke penalty. He wasn't necessarily sure that he was going to get it. But at the same time, he knew it was a possibility, and he went ahead and called it on himself. And I just, again, I think that's cool. That's what type of people we want to raise, right? Like that's what you want in sports, someone that's going to be honest and, the integrity. And I've always said it, I've heard this said forever, and it's so true because me, I'm a big golfer. I play a lot of golf, and it's like, you ever want to find out about somebody, play 18 holes of golf with them and just see how they play, how they act. And it's so true. I really do. You can find out a lot about a person playing golf with them.
Well, they talked about him leaving $2 million on the table because of that penalty. But I was talking to a friend of mine who's a head pro at a country club, and he said, you know what, though, he knows him. He said the type of guy he is, it would have bothered him the rest of the tournament, just if he did not turn that himself in. And he said mentally, it was able to give him kind of just, I guess it relieved that burden, and he was just able to play, free and able to play just so well. And so he said, really, you could say he left money on the table, but you don't know. You don't know how he would have played if he didn't turn himself in.
Well, and what price do you put on integrity?
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, the rest of his life, that's a story that will follow him. His kids will know it. Just doing the right thing because it's the right thing. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, Britt, what do you got for us today?
Man, we've got a really interesting topic today. We're going to talk a little bit about social media and its impact on kids. And, that's a huge topic. We're going to kind of boil it down and talk about its impact on young athletes. And we're 3 dads. We're not experts. Brad and I have, we have a lot of grown kids at this point. Jeff, your oldest is 11. I'm sure that, they're wanting to be on social media, but it's going to get nothing but worse. A lot of parents in our audience. I mean, social media is just part of the culture, and we have to deal with it, and we have to understand it as parents. So we really want to dig into that today. And I just kind of want to start by, talking about, why it's important, why we think it's important to talk about this today, and spend a whole episode talking about it.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's a huge topic. I think it's a very debatable topic. You said it with 11. We do not let my daughter get on social media. Just not there yet, for some of the good that it can bring. I just think the bad outweighs it right now until she can fully grasp what it's meant for. And we'll get into this, but I told you just off the start for me, can't tell you how many college coaches, pro scouts that I've talked to in a lot of different sports that say one of the main things we look at now is a kid's social media account too, especially if they're a fringe player possible. If it's me, promotion, boy, you better watch out.
Well, it's definitely bigger than sports. If you go to any kind of gathering of parents, it's probably the number one concern they have from especially from middle school on up. But it also has an effect on youth sports. And so, yeah, it's a great topic. And Britt's the one that kind of came up with this idea to talk about it. And I think we can really have some good discussion.
Well, I mean, look, we've talked about this before. We live in a culture right now that, teenagers and preteens, anxiety and depression and all those things are rampant today. And it's no coincidence that the rise of social media, it correlates directly to the rise of all those things in our kids. And the comparisons and the perfectionism and all those types of things. My daughter is a licensed counselor. She has a master's in counseling. And, I talked to her a lot this weekend about all this because they dug in and dig into this all the time. And so I just think it's a really important topic for us as parents to have more awareness than just, the run of the mill awareness. And so we want to talk today. We don't think all social media is bad. There's positive aspects of social media, but there's also negative aspects. And we want to kind of cover and talk about them. And we hope that people hang in here with us for the whole episode because, again, I think as parents, our call is to shepherd our kids, with wisdom and not to control them as they get older and older and older, but to provide guidance and boundaries as they're younger. And so, hope you'll hang in with us for this whole episode. It's really good stuff. I'm going to start off with just some stats that I pulled down, and there's a ton of stats out there. I'm just going to read a few of them. But 90% of teens, that means ages 13 to 17 today, 90 something percent are using social media on a regular basis, and almost 70% of kids under 13 years old are on social media. So, I mean, it's everywhere. We all know that. 75% of kids report having at least one active social media profile. And TikTok is the biggest today. And the pandemic kind of flipped that. TikTok, during the pandemic just took off. And, kids were looking for ways to communicate. And there were some good aspects of that, but some negatives as well. It said the stats are that on average today, teenagers are on social media 4.8 hours a day. I mean, that's almost 5 hours a day that they're watching these little bite-sized pieces. So anyway, we look at that with sports where there's 60 million kids that are playing youth sports. And the opportunities for those 60 million to be impacted by social media are huge. So given all that backdrop, before we get in, I just wanted to kind of revisit our generation. And Brad and I are a different generation than Jeff, but we're the three of us are the same in that we didn't have to deal with social media growing up. And Jeff, I'll ask you because you played at a high level. I mean, think about, when you came through, if social media had been involved, what that would have looked like when you were playing as a kid.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic to talk about. And I think, my big thing was the newspapers, right? Like that's where it was kind of like, and I remember you'd play a game Friday night and I could not wait to go. And this is right. Like we're selfish people. I mean, we are, that's how we're born. And it feels good to see yourself talked about in a great light. And I remember, Friday night you play a good game. I would go get the AJC so I could see Saturday morning what they said about us, Gwinnett Daily Post, all these different local papers. And it felt great, right? Like you read it and you're reading good stuff and you feel good about it. But that was kind of it. Now it's, you can get it right after the game stuff and it continues all week, right? Like that's, I think the difference of social media is all of a sudden you might read a paper about you Saturday morning, but then for 6 days, you're not reading anything about yourself. It's just, you're going about your day. Now, I mean, there's videos of 5th, 6th, 7th grade kids, girls and boys doing amazing things, and you're seeing about it nonstop. Then people are posting it, reposting it, and I just, you're going down a slippery slope, right? And so I think one thing I'll say is I think you have to know your kid, right? You have to know what makes them tick. Like my daughter's 11, I told you, she can watch some YouTube videos and stuff, and she's usually okay with kind of putting it away. My son, on the other hand, who's about to turn 9, we can tell a difference in his attitude and everything else if he starts getting too much screen time, whether it's watching those videos, what makes him tick. And so I think that's one thing too, guys, that we don't talk about enough is every kid's different. And, if I let Braden, my 8-year-old, sit in front of a TV for 6 hours, he would in 2 seconds. Whereas my daughter, I think after a while, would be like, all right, I'm going to go do something else, whether that's read or do whatever. So I think that's where social media is scary. is that some kids it can affect more than others. And, so that's kind of where I land there.
Yeah, I think that, gosh, this is so many things to talk about here, but I think not just in sports, it's a comparison. It's a vehicle for comparison, which is not healthy for at any age, but especially when a kid is going through puberty, or a kid is just starting high school. A kid is probably the most insecure they're ever going to be in life, and yet social media makes every single thing makes everybody else like they're having the perfect life. And so as adults, we see that, and hopefully, I mean, it even affects us, whether it's Facebook or whatever, like, gosh, they have the perfect marriage, they have the perfect life. But think about a 13-year-old kid, on a Saturday night. I joked about, like, when I was in high school, if you didn't get invited to the party, you wouldn't find out about it, until a week later or maybe the next Monday at school. Now, if a kid didn't get invited to a party, they see it right. They see it at the party as it's happening. And it's brutal, and there's good aspects to it, but the other thing, like Jeff talks about, there's really two types in terms of sports. There's people covering you nonstop, which could be good and bad, but there's also it's another vehicle to self-promote yourself. Which, I mean, Jeff, he gave his experience. He didn't self-promote himself. He wanted to see what others said about him, which is good and bad, but it's normal. But Jeff wasn't out there every time he had a game, whether it's a travel game or a football game, didn't go on X or didn't go on TikTok and talk about just how great he was. And I think that the kids see the older athletes doing that. And so that's just another thing that's unhealthy about, I get it. Like, the good players don't have to promote themselves. So, like, why are kids feeling the need to do that? Well, it's because the role models that they look up to are doing it. And so, yeah, there's a lot here.
Hold on real quick. I'll say the one thing that Brad said that it drives me crazy when I see people repost stuff about themselves doing something good. And that's just, I know I might be in the minority on that, but as Brad just said, like, you don't have to do that stuff, man. Like, let other people post. If they want to post great things you've done, great. But when these kids at 11, 12, 13 start reposting, it just is a bad look. It's not a good look. And it just, as you said, Brad, it comes across selfish to me, is what it does.
Well, totally. I mean, you're just promoting yourself. In most aspects of life, we teach our kids, not to do that. That's not a positive thing. So why? Because you have a vehicle that makes it easy to do that, and lots of people do it, does that mean that's okay? And I mean, the answer is no. If you promote yourself like crazy on social media, then you end up, it just makes you, focused on yourself. And we know that's not a good thing. Brad, you brought up the whole comparison thing, and you said something that I think is important to underscore, is that we know that teenagers are in their most vulnerable time of life in terms of self-consciousness. It's the most self-conscious time of life. And social media just presses on that button like crazy as people post the highlights of their life, not any of the lowlights, but all the highlights of their life. And it causes kids to think, I don't measure up. My body's not right. The way I dress isn't right. The way I perform isn't right. I'm not popular because I'm not getting invited to that party. There's just all those types of things. And that happens in sports as well. There's a study that I found that is a pretty recent study, and they looked at a whole number of kids who played sports or used to play sports, and a very high percentage of them quit sports because of comparisons on social media and body image, and just looking at the bodies out there and saying, well, I can't be good at this sport because I don't look like that. And that's a staggering thing.
Or just the fact that, it's not nowadays, it's not just the high school game that's blowing up on X or on TikTok. It's every single AAU and travel game and the kids don't know that it's not a great tournament, or they don't know that it's that you see these other kids, promoting themselves, and sometimes it's their coaches promoting them, which is fine, I guess. But they're looking at these kids that are like, all of them look like they're doing great. And, in the baseball, social media, travel baseball, it looks like every kid's hitting 600, and hitting 20 bombs, every summer. And so a kid looks at that, or looks at an AAU, that kid, kid's averaging a double or whatever. Well, I can't do that. I can't, that's who I'm competing against, which it's not, but, because those kids aren't that good, or they're the top 2%. And so, yeah, it's discouraging to kids to say, wow, I mean, I'm not going to be able to compete. So why even do it?
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because it's like you only see the videos of the kid getting a double off the wall. Like, you didn't see a video of the kid getting carved up on 3 pitches, walking back. And me and Katie laugh about that all the time, because even outside of sports, like you said, Britt, it gives a false expectation. Like, we've seen people, even friends of ours, post stuff like how sweet their kids are at bedtime, and bedtime's great. And I'm like, our house is an absolute you-know-what at bedtime. Like, I'm like, there's no way their house is like, we got 4 kids, lay with me, pray here, and it's like, oh my gosh, rip your head off. And these people are acting like every night's the sweetest 30 minutes at bedtime. And I'm like, well, good Lord, but it is funny because, I think social media is good for some. I enjoy following some of the people that show real life stuff, right? Like, this is what we go through every day. You appreciate that. And then you have some, like you said, that it's just everything is great all the time. And it's like, we all know that's not true. And we all know that you don't live life that way. But I think you set expectations for our kids that either they can't reach or they're false. Like you said, this kid got 3 hits that tournament. Well, he might've been 3 for 20 and they only showed the 3 hits.
You touched on something I want to talk about a little bit, and that's parents posting about their kids or posting about their family. And again, you're moving into this arena where your kids are going to, for the next 10 years, your kids are going to be involved in things and they're going to achieve things. And so when is it okay? And again, there's no right or wrong here, but let's just talk about, philosophically, when's it okay for parents to post about their kids' achievements? And when is it like, okay, enough is enough?
Well, I'll take this one to start and give Brad time. I see Brad needs a minute to think about what he's going to say.
I'm afraid I'm going to have an extreme answer. So you go ahead.
No, I think, look, every once in a while, if your kid does something great, like, I'm okay with it. I really am. Like, if you play summer ball, basketball all summer, and at the very end of the summer, hey, what a great summer it was. Samantha dropped 25 in this game and we had a blast. We learned a lot, whatever you show, that's fine. But if you're seeing post after post, game after game after game, I think that's where it's like, okay, enough's enough. And, again, I think you teeter on, what are you trying to get out of this? Are you trying to promote your kid? Are you promoting the team? Are you promoting the experiences that they've had? So I think, there's not a right or wrong on this, but I think we all know, right? If you're seeing someone be promoted constantly, I think that's where you're like, time out. That's a little much for me.
What do you think? And I'll share.
I don't think there's that many times you should promote your kid. I just think, like, look, now if you want to, like, I've sent you guys a text of, Brady hitting a home run, something like that. But I mean, I just don't think it's a good look. I think like Jeff said, if you want to, if there's a really, really sweet moment and your kid is like, really been struggling and then had that moment that you want to, but I mean, is it something that you have to tell the world? I mean, it may be something you could send it out to your family, your friends. Even if it's, I don't know, like if they had a walk off in the state championship game, like Jeff Francoeur, or they score the winning touchdown, yeah, maybe, but it's already out there. Like, do you have to promote it? And I don't know. I just think that, I mean, they're gonna get, if they do something great, they're already gonna get the congratulations at the moment. They're gonna get congratulations at their school. The family's going to know about it. Do you have to promote it on social media? And I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, but I just don't think it's a great thing.
I mean, I generally agree with that. I think less is more here. I kind of feel like, I think we're all saying the same thing. I kind of feel like if there's a major achievement, then, I think that's okay. But I think your context ought to be like, why am I doing this? And if you come on the side of saying, okay, I want to speak in, I want to, celebrate this achievement, then I think it's okay. But if you're doing that a lot, and a lot of people do it a lot, we used to call, when our kids were younger, we used to call Facebook brag book, because it just seemed like there were some people out there that just constantly, bragging about their kids doing sometimes little things. It's like, okay. And for the most part, I think, kind of what you said, Jeff, there's part of me, it's like, why do you need to tell everybody? Nobody cares about all these little things going on.
It makes me think of guys. Me and my wife laugh all the time. My favorite comedian, Sebastian Maniscalco, who is hilarious, does this great thing where he's talking about that self-promotion. And he's like, if little Timmy scored 28 points, I don't care. Nobody cares. And he's like, now if little Timmy can jump over the house from the front to the back, yeah, I want to see that. Like, show me that. But it is true. Like, there's sweet moments to promote it. And like you said, like, if there's a team accomplishment, if there's something going, I think that's kind of cool. And I'm okay with that. But when it's just continuously promotion of your kid, I'm with you, man. Nobody wants to continuously see it. Like you said, Brad, I think you gave a great point. Like how you sent me and Britt and some of your buddies, like, look what Britt, we walk through life with you. That's a totally different scenario. I have my small group where I send a lot of stuff that I'm excited for my kids, even excited for myself, maybe that I did something cool. But that's a small circle of people.
And you don't ever see the post that said, my kid didn't play a lot this year, but he was a great teammate, or she was a great team. Like that would be something you may want to brag about. Like, my kid really struggled all year, but man, she was an awesome teammate. And that to me is like, that's okay. It's still kind of bragging a little bit, but you're not seeing, people don't post that. They post, oh man, she was amazing. She was, she had 14 spikes in this, club volleyball game. And you're right.
My kid got cut.
Yeah.
She's great.
Yeah. She's a super kid, she's awesome. But yeah, it's, I don't know, maybe again, I may get heat for this, but I don't see the need for it.
I think most people feel that way. They just don't say it.
Well, I'm saying it, so I'll take the heat.
We're with you. Here's a couple practical aspects of some negative things about social media that we really as parents should keep in mind. Number one, we know now more than ever that sleep impacts performance. And kids who are laying in bed with their phone and they're spending an hour or two, they're just losing sleep. And it has direct impact, negative impact on their performance on the field. So there's a negative right there.
Well, it's more than just that. It's probably a lot more stuff that's being negatively impacted than just their performance on the field.
Well, for sure.
And they talk about for adults.
This is a sports show.
I know. I'm sorry. It's become expanded, I think. But but they talk about how unhealthy it is for adults to have their phone beside their bed. And so we fight.
Think how many times did I do it, guys? I'm sitting here last night in New York. I mean, I'll be honest. I sat there for 45 minutes looking at stupid stuff that I could have been sleeping. And so my point is now all of a sudden you give kids who can't control like adults can control most of the time. You're giving them a free weapon to just continue to go. And I agree, man. I think too, if your parents, like if your kid's got a phone, take that phone at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, whatever it is, charge it, keep it downstairs and be done with it. Don't give them that opportunity to do that.
Yeah. It's not good for them. I mean, there's just so much wrong with that. We tried to, for years and years, our rule was, okay, before you go to bed, phone's got to be outside your room. We got to see your phone outside your room. And because they're not mature enough, we're all not mature enough in a lot of ways to be able to resist that temptation. And so just try to nip it in the bud before it becomes a problem. But I can't see the positive of
Well, and we know today from lots of studies that phones and social media, there's There's an addictive nature to it. I mean, literally, there are kids who are addicted and adults who are addicted to these things, and it impacts all aspects of your life. I mean, how many times have we gotten on and you look at reels on Instagram and you think you're looking at them for 10 minutes and you look down and it's been an hour.
Yeah.
And it's just a waste of time. But again, I think for us to expose our kids to some of this and talk about, the realities of, hey man, you're doing all these things to achieve what you want to achieve on the field. But if you're not getting 7-8 hours of sleep at night, you're negatively impacting your performance. And social media is keeping you from doing that. So, any other things you guys see in all this?
I agree with what you're saying. I think we're even from not even a sports aspect, but just life in general. I think it has our kids comparing themselves to other kids all the time instead of just go about who you are, who we raised you to be confident in who you are. But again, I think if they go on, look at what so and so has, or look what they did this past weekend, and it's like, well, we're not them, and it's okay. And so I think it gives I think you said it earlier, Brad, like just for kids comparing themselves, it's not healthy, from body types to how good you are at a certain time in a sport, or to whatever you're doing. It's so small in the big scheme of things, but to our kids in that moment, it's everything. And so how do you limit that?
Yeah. Another thing that I thought of is that, the tough thing about having a phone is if it's always with them. The big thing when Britt and I were growing up, and you too, Jeff, you're not that much younger than us, is it like, TV time, like the TV was, we grew up in the TV generation. And so, we're sitting there watching Happy Days or whatever. And our parents could just say, hey, get out of the house. My mom would just lock the door and say, no, you're going to go out and you're going to play. You're not going to watch TV anymore. Well, the kids, when they leave, they have their phones with them. And so it's always part of them. And it breaks my heart to see, you see these, like when you're traveling and you see these youth teams, together, and all the kids are on their phones, and it's like, man, that's got to hurt the team. It's got to hurt their interpersonal skills as well. Like nobody knows how to talk to anybody. Nobody's looking anybody in the eye. And so, it's different now. Like there's always going to be a distraction, I'm sure, throughout generations. Ours was television and things like that. But the way they made these devices to be able to, you can take it anywhere you want to. It's just an extra challenge.
Yeah, they become a support mechanism for kids. And one of the things I was talking to my daughter this weekend, and she said, one of the biggest things to make sure parents understand is kids use their phones to numb themselves from the pressures they're feeling from the world. And they bury themselves in their phones, and they just go deeper and deeper to as a numbing mechanism. But it leads to anxiety, and it leads to depression. And so I think, parents, when you see your kid doing that and just going inward, we've got to be aware, and we've got to seize those opportunities and try to have deep conversations with your kids about what's going on and pull them out. It's tough at first if they're in that mode because they just want to be here. Well,
but it hurts them. It hurts them in the future too, because professionally, like Jeff talked about, if they're ever meeting someone that they need to make a good impression, if they don't know how to look somebody in the eye, give them a firm handshake, have a conversation with them. If they've been on their phone for their entire youth, it's going to be hard for them to break out of it and become someone that they can talk to an adult or talk to other people, have deep relationships. And it's just, there's so many things unhealthy about it.
Let's talk about some of the positive aspects, because there are some positive aspects about that. We hope, you know, we have a social media, presence as Pure Athlete. And the reason we do is because we want to use our posts to inspire and motivate, the right approaches. And there's a lot of stuff out there on social media that is inspiring, and, and that you can learn skills and techniques and be motivated and be inspired. All those types of things are out there too. So used correctly, social media can really help your kids.
Yeah, I think so. I think, look, from a coaching standpoint, I can't tell you how many times I've learned drills from other coaches or things to help our kids, right, to do stuff. So again, there are great things if there's guardrails and if they're, where they can go, what they can see, and look, for recruiting purposes too, for a lot of these kids, I think just to get on someone else's map or another, just bring awareness to what that kid is doing. I think it's great. Again, I don't think it should come from the parents. It should come from the coach, the schools, whatever it is. But I think there's way more opportunity for kids to be seen and do other things. So, like you said, it's all different. But again, I think that's where the parents have to have guardrails, for these kids. And going back, it's so funny because this past weekend for Labor Day, we went to the farm. My wife's parents live on a farm. We got four-wheelers, all this stuff. And it was so great, man. We played in the creek. We did all this stuff, and the kids had the best time, but they knew they had no access to getting on the phones, getting on an iPad, stuff like that, because we took it away, and they had the best time. But again, that was because me and Katie forced it on them, and so they had the best time. And, we don't do that enough.
Yeah, it's not the device. I mean, we're not, it's the problems of our culture are not because of the device. The device just exposed the problems even more. I mean, everything's a hard issue with your kids, I mean, it's more of a challenge now than it was probably when we were kids because of these devices. And you're right. I mean, if there could be a lot of great content that they're looking at, and hopefully they're looking at Pure Athletes content. So, I mean, like I said, we do this. There's tons of inspirational content, tons of instructional content. I mean, Masterclass is amazing in terms of just people that have that desire to learn. I mean, it's out there. It's just, man, it just seems to be, I don't know what the percentage is, but so much of what's on there is a distraction. It's discouraging and it's distracting, which are just two unhealthy things. And so, but it's not the device's fault. It's not, the internet's fault. It's the fact that it exposes more of our hard issues that we have. And we just have to, as parents, we just have to help and come alongside our kids, to deal with this new challenge that probably we didn't have to deal with as much growing up. But it can be a great thing. It really can. You just have to use it for the right things.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, we have to, as parents, recognize this is the culture our kids, live in. And so how do they adapt to that culture in a healthy way? And we can just completely remove it. And certainly at certain ages, that's the approach we ought to take. But as our kids become 16, 17, 18 years old, we become less about hard boundaries and rules and more about guidance and preparing them to make decisions based on, understanding the implication of those decisions. And so I think we have to teach our kids and model to our kids a healthy approach in all this. So good stuff. Parents, it's, we know how tough this is. We still deal with it ourselves. We all deal with it personally as well as with our kids. But we're going to talk about this more in the future. We'll probably have an expert on at some point in the future. But today, I think our big challenge is, be aware of what your kid's doing, speak into it. It's, you have tremendous impact if you approach it the right way with your kids and you're intentional about it, and just be aware.
Yeah, and I think for me, my final thing would be I'd love feedback from parents and coaches that are listening on good ways that you all go about doing things, or things you disagree with what we're talking about, because I think that's the whole thing, right? And we continuously say this because I get all the time. You know how I get so mad when someone just goes off the radar at what we're talking about and sends something. I'm like, this is not a you're right, I'm right, this is perfect, you're perfect. I mean, this is trying to come up with ideas for everybody to have a better experience. And so I think the same way. I mean, I'm sure there's some things we're missing here that maybe some parents do that's great with their kids and good ideas. And so give us your feedback, let us know. I think the big thing at the end of the day is with social media and with that, just be aware of what your kid is doing on there, what they're posting, what people are replying, what they're replying back to them, because I think that's again things that unfortunately we see it with athletes now, guys, female and male. They might have posted something 15 years ago and it gets brought up. And you know, there's plenty of kids that we've seen that are in college and it's like, hey, this kid when he was 16 years old posted this and it has affected them. I mean, they have gotten negative, they've gotten canceled, they've gotten whatever. So as you always say, what you say now because of technology is going to be with you in 15 years. So someone can dig it up and do that. So I think that's where kids need to understand that there's bigger, like you said, Brad, I think the phone is a great thing. You have access to things we never had access to when we were younger, but with that comes consequences too. And the consequences are bigger because of it. So just make sure you're careful.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff talked about this in in a past episode where your dad would say like, don't brag on yourself. Let other people say good things about you, but that's not your place. But the device, the social media just gives you a megaphone to make that even louder. And so you just got to be extra careful. We got to be extra careful to teach our kids about that. And it's about humility. And it's just harder now because it's harder to probably be humble for these kids than it was for us. The other thing, and you both have said this, we're not experts by any means. We haven't conquered this as adults or as parents. I mean, it's a daily challenge, a daily struggle. So we're not putting it out there like, oh gosh, we figured this out, and you should be like us. No, we struggle with this too. We struggle with this, in many ways. And so, but I think we feel it as a challenge, and it is our job with this platform to talk about it and to talk about the negatives of it. And so, yeah, just like Jeff said, man, we love your feedback because we love to hear things that you guys are doing well and kind of fighting against this.
Good stuff.
Jeff, have a good rest of the week.
Yeah, thank you. See the Mets and Red Sox, and we'll see what happens.
Sorry about the Clemson Tigers too. We didn't talk about that any, but
no, we don't need to go into that. That's a whole nother story. I have a feeling though Georgia's going to make a lot of teams look pretty bad.
Yeah, I think so.
Hey, I could be in Tallahassee. That would be even worse right now.
Yep,
That's true.
All right, y'all have a great week.